Everyone tells you that the steam engine was a dinosaur and the diesel was the hero that saved the world. But I'm here to tell you the truth. The diesel revolution was not a success. It was an industrial car crash that we are still feeling today. In the 1950s, American railroads traded their hearts for a calculator. They threw away massive machines that could run for 100 years and replaced them with disposable engines that started breaking the moment the warranty ran out. We were told it was about efficiency. We were told it was progress. But beneath the shiny paint and the new marketing, a secret rot began to eat the railroad from the inside. We lost the master shops, we lost the ancient skills, and we lost the soul of American iron. Was the diesel engine a miracle of progress, or was it just a very expensive mistake that ended the age of giants? Step inside Roanoke's industrial heart and you feel the weight of real power. This was no warehouse of spare parts. This was a cathedral of iron, smoke, and sweat. A place that could birth a locomotive from raw steel and send it thundering down the main line. The foundry's furnaces melted 18 tons of steel in a single batch. That's not a typo. 18 tons, glowing white, poured into molds shaped by a pattern. Room holding over 1,200 wooden forms, each one a memory, a solution, a lesson learned on the rails. Here, nothing was bought in a box. Every rod, every wheel, every connecting link was cut, turned, and finished by men who knew the language of metal. The rod lathes spun at dawn and midnight, shaping the muscle of the engine. No hydrodynamic oil pumps, just the honest slap of reciprocating mass, oil can in hand. The press, 30 tons of pressure, could forge a main rod that would outlive the man who made it. Patterns lined the racks like a library of American know-how. If a part cracked in the field, Roanoke could cast a new one in days. No phone call to a vendor. No waiting for a crate from Chicago. The solution was made right here, by hands that remembered every flaw and every fix. This was the forge, not the circuit board. A locomotive was eternal because the shop made it so. The skills ran deep. Apprenticeship meant 4 years in the fire, learning the secrets of iron, not just how to swap a module. Every inch of the shop buzzed with the pride of creation. Railroads didn't just run trains, they built them, rebuilt them, made them better with every pass through the bays. The suits in the office called it overhead. Out here, it was life. This is what we lost when the calculators took over and the order came down. Buy, don't build, replace, don't repair. The heart of the railroad was cast, forged, and finished right here in the shop. A railroad shop was a living thing. You didn't just clock in and turn a wrench. You entered a brotherhood, a pipeline of skill that ran deeper than steel. Apprentice, journeyman, master, each step earned, not handed down by some HR memo. 4 years in the fire, rotating through every trade the shop demanded. Foundry, machine bay, pattern room, blacksmith's forge. You learned to read metal by the sound of the hammer, to judge a casting by the way it cooled in your palm. The old men watched you, silent, until you proved you could square a rod with nothing but a file and your eye. 70% of the 1945 Altoona roster wore those stripes, skilled artisans, not button pushers. That meant the railroad could rebuild a locomotive from the ground up, swap a boiler, remachine a crank, or roll new plate for a firebox. No waiting on a vendor's delivery, no begging for a proprietary part. If you needed it, you made it, and you made it better than the last time. That is what kept the machines alive. A Pacific or a Mikado could see 3, 4, 5 lifetimes, reborn every decade as the shop's best ideas layered onto old bones. The apprentice didn't just learn to fix parts, he learned to think like a machine, to hear the change in pitch when a bearing started to go, to see a hairline crack before the metallurgist ever touched it. The master mechanic was a problem solver, a teacher, a guardian of secrets. He passed down tricks of the trade that never made it into any manual. A tap with a brass hammer, a shim in the right spot, a weld that would outlast the paperwork. That was the real insurance policy, the human mind, sharpened by 1,000 failures and 1,000,000 fixes. This was the backbone of the railroad's resilience. When the world turned upside down, when the suits in the city tried to run the numbers, the shop kept the trains moving because it could do what the calculator could not: rebuild, reinvent, endure. The forge versus the circuit board. Created in the shop, not bought in a box. That was the promise of the railroad, a promise written in sweat, not ink. And when the diesel came, with its sealed modules and throwaway logic, that promise began to rot from the inside out. The sales war began with a color brochure and a promise. General Motors' Electromotive Division, EMD, did not just roll out a locomotive, they rolled out a campaign. The FT was not a machine, it was a spectacle. Glossy ads, full-spread magazine features, the kind of marketing that made you think you would be a fool not to buy in. The FT was painted in blue and gold, posed on mountain curves, always gleaming, always new. The pitch was simple: more power, less work, no firebox, no boiler wash. The FT would save your railroad. No more 4-year apprenticeships, no more foundry smoke. Just a key, a starter, and a promise that the future would run itself. Numbers were the ammunition. EMD built 555A units and 541B units before the war ended. Wartime delivery records, stamped by the War Production Board, show 492 FT units shipped out when steel was rationed, when every wheel counted. The FT ran day and night on the Santa Fe, the Burlington, the Milwaukee Road. The ads boasted a 50% fuel savings over coal, a crew cut in half, a maintenance interval that made the old shopmen look slow and wasteful. Fuel economy was their war cry. Maintenance reduction was their shield. The FT's truss body frame, the sealed bearings, the hydrodynamic oil pump, these were the new gospel. The circuit board was coming for the forge. Inside the sales pitch, you will find numbers that dazzle and numbers that deceive. The FT's mean time between failures was 7,350 hours, they said, double that of the steamers. The performance tables compared tractive effort, mileage, horsepower. But the fine print is where the suits hid the capital cost, the depreciation, the parts you could not make in your own shop. The FT was a salesman's dream. It looked like progress. It sounded like salvation. The railroad presidents flipped through brochures, watched the demonstration runs, and signed the order sheets. The promise of efficiency was too bright to ignore. An archivist reads from the old EMD catalog. 1 engine, 1 crew, 1 maintenance team, 1,000 hours between service. The ad men called it the future. The shopmen called it surrender. The FT was the spearhead, the salesman's tool that pried open the doors of every master shop in the country. It was not just a locomotive, it was the first crate in a long line of boxes that would replace the blacksmith's hammer with a shipping label from LaGrange. The suits cheered the numbers. The shopmen heard the funeral bell. The ledger tells a colder story than any sales pitch. Diesel's miracle, they said, was in the numbers: fuel consumed, crews cut, miles between failures. But the real arithmetic lived in the back pages, where the accountants sharpened their knives. In 1948, diesel fuel cost a dime a gallon. That is what the charts show, 10 cents, steady as a drumbeat. Coal, by the ton, hovered just below half that. The suits ran their projections on that cheap oil. Never mind that prices would climb, never mind that the world market does not care about railroad dreams. Depreciation was the real trick. The suits loved straight-line schedules. Buy a diesel for $300,000, write it down over 20 years, and the books look clean. $15,000 a year, neat as you please. Steam? The old shopmen rebuilt a Pacific or a Mikado for $250,000, then wrote it off in 12 years. Why? Because the IRS called it maintenance of way equipment. The difference was more than just numbers. A steam engine could be reborn every decade, new boiler, new rods, 100 more fixes. Its bones stayed on the roster for 50, 60, 80 years. The diesel was disposable from the start. When the clock ran out, it went to scrap, not to the shop. Section 179 of the tax code handed out a $100,000 deduction for new equipment. The railroads lined up for the write-off, not the machine. That deduction made the diesel look cheap on paper. The accountants called it progress. The shopmen called it a shell game. Every dollar saved at the pump was spent 3 times over in depreciation, parts, and dependency on outside vendors. The fuel price was a mirage. The real money was in the tax return. The suits got their quarterly gains. The railroad lost its backbone. The numbers dazzled in the boardroom but bled the shops dry. The circuit board replaced the forge, and the ledger replaced the craftsman. What looked like savings was just a sleight of hand, an illusion that traded a century of resilience for a generation of planned obsolescence. The numbers don't lie. Altoona Works, once the iron heart of the Pennsylvania Railroad, bled out in slow motion. In 1945, you could count nearly 2,800 men on the payroll. Boilermakers, pattern makers, machinists, blacksmiths. By 1955, it was down to 1,600. By 1965, barely 1,200. The ledger reads like an obituary, each line a family, each cut a future lost. The shop whistle, once the town's alarm clock, fell silent more often. The suits in Philadelphia called it modernization. The men called it betrayal. Payroll wasn't just a line item, it was the lifeblood of Altoona. Every dollar earned on the shop floor turned over in the town: grocers, schools, the hardware store, the hospital. In 1945, the city pulled in $4.3 million in tax revenue, most of it riding on the back of the railroad. That money built roads, kept the lights on, paid teachers and nurses. By 1965, the number had fallen to $1.2 million. $3 million gone. The city slashed school budgets, closed playgrounds, patched potholes with gravel and hope. Houses that once belonged to foremen and machinists stood empty, paint peeling, windows boarded. The for sale signs lasted longer than the jobs. A foreman sits with the payroll ledger, thumb tracing names he trained himself. He remembers the apprentice who could square a rod by ear, the machinist who knew the sound of a bearing about to go. Gone now. Some found work at the car plant in Allentown, some drifted, some never worked again. The men who built the backbone of America, reduced to a number on a spreadsheet, replaced by a crate stamped from Chicago. The suits will tell you it was progress. That diesel was more efficient, that the numbers made sense. But the numbers do not build a community. They do not teach a boy to read metal by the color of its glow. They do not keep the lights on in a town built by the forge. The payroll crash was not just a loss of jobs, it was the end of a way of life, one that could create, sustain, and endure. Now, the town is left with memories, empty shops, and a lesson written in cold, hard numbers. Created in the shop or bought in a box, choose carefully. The circuit board cannot put food on your neighbor's table. A pattern room once held the memory of a railroad. 1,200 wooden forms, each one a solution, a fix, a story, lined the racks at Altoona and Roanoke. Apprentices walked those rows, fingers tracing the grain, learning what could not be taught in books. In 1958, the Union Minutes record the end of that line. The apprenticeship program, the pipeline of skill, was halted. 4 years in the fire, gone with a single vote. The suits called it modernization. The men called it surrender. A foreman sits on a crate, thumb pressed into a ledger. He remembers the last boy he trained, taught him to square a rod by ear, to feel the heat in the steel, to know when a casting was right by the way it rang on the bench. He spits. Now they want me to swap modules. Pull a box, plug in a new one. Do not ask what is inside. Do not fix, just replace. 1959 brought the first original equipment manufacturer service contract. No more forging rods or rolling plate. The railroad signed with General Motors for a parts swap program, prime movers, traction motors, turbochargers, all delivered in crates. The shop floor turned quiet. The pattern room gathered dust. The old men watched as the new hires learned to open a shipping label, not a blueprint. The language of iron was replaced by vendor codes and warranty claims. A craftsman's pride cannot be boxed. The knowledge that made a locomotive eternal was gone, replaced by a call to Lagrange or Erie. The forge was silent. The circuit board ruled. The master mechanic became a parts clerk, his hands clean, his mind idle. The pipeline of skill was cut, and with it, the soul of the railroad. The suits got their quarterly gains. The railroad lost its memory. You can count the savings in thermal efficiency. You can write off the depreciation. But you cannot measure what was lost in the silence of the pattern room or the look in a foreman's eyes when he hands back the keys to a shop that no longer needs him. Created in the shop or bought in a box, the eternal or the disposable. The choice was made, and the cost is written in every empty bay, every forgotten pattern, every lost trade. Crack open a modern Tier 4 diesel and you will not find iron and sweat. You will find a black box, sealed, encrypted, and locked behind a vendor password. The master mechanic is gone, replaced by a man with a laptop and a warning, do not attempt repair. The EPA calls it progress. Tier 4 emissions rules. Demand after-treatment systems that run hotter than a forge, selective catalytic reduction units, and diesel particulate filters, all stacked behind the prime mover. Selective catalytic reduction beds reach 600 degrees Celsius under a hard pull. The firmware that runs them is proprietary, locked down by the manufacturer. Try to fix a fault, and you will trigger a code that only the OEM can clear. A maintenance manager stares at the screen, no rods to file, no bearings to shim. The diagnostic menu lists faults in vendor code. He can swap a module maybe if the part is in stock, but the real fix is out of reach, buried in software. The old shop could cast a new rod in a week. Now, a failed after-treatment system means a locomotive sits dead, waiting for a crate from Erie or Lagrange. No one here knows what is inside. This is the new railroad. Buy the box, trust the vendor, and pray the firmware holds. Created in the shop is dead. Bought in a box is the law. The eternal has been replaced by the disposable, one sealed module at a time. A diesel is born with an expiration date stamped in the metal. 20 years. That's the number the accountants wrote in the ledger. Not a day more. The circuit board doesn't care how well you treat it. When the clock runs out, the whole machine is scrap. The new Tier 4 fleets? They're even worse. 7 years on a module maybe, if you're lucky. 15 years and the capital's written off. The shop doesn't rebuild, it waits for the crate. A locomotive that once lived a century, rebuilt, reboilered, reborn, now gets one pass through the system before the warranty runs out and the vendor stops answering the phone. Here's the ugly arithmetic, the so-called efficiency miracle, 30% better on the fuel, sure. But every 7 years, you're swapping out after-treatment beds, SCR units, control modules, each one locked behind a vendor password. The railroad doesn't own the fix. It rents it, one crate at a time. The master mechanic is gone. In his place, a man with a barcode scanner, logging another box for the landfill. Steam was eternal because the shop made it so. Diesel is disposable because the spreadsheet demands it. The ledger is clear. What was created in the shop is gone, replaced by a cycle of dependency, waste, and planned obsolescence. The suits call it progress. I call it surrender. Thermal efficiency 1. But what did we lose? Hydrodynamic lubrication was replaced by throwaway modules. Reciprocating mass was traded for parts bought in a box. The forge is cold and the circuit board rules. Self-reliance melted down for quarterly gains, and the suits call it progress. Today, the disposable future grinds forward, one master shop at a time. The only thing eternal now is depreciation. Drop your thoughts below. If you remember what craftsmanship felt like.